But Leslie, why don't you start with talking about the chameleon effect?
I almost looked at it as a strength. I looked at this being able to be a chameleon and just insert myself into different social situations and not only fit in, but stand out in these roles. And what I'm learning is that it's not normal. The banyan tree is a tree unlike others, a representation of resilience and strength through its ability to overcome the status quo and fulfill its purpose.
It knew that it was meant for something bigger and didn't allow the limits of other trees to confine its growth.
And our story looks similar. I'm Leslie.
And I'm Mindy. And our hope is that every one of our listeners learns to take up all the space they were created to, just like the banyan tree.
Welcome back to the Banyan Effect Podcast. I am your co-host, Leslie, and Mindy and I today have an exciting new book that we're actually going to walk through and discuss with our listeners today. We have been really, really liking this book, Worthy. If you're watching us on YouTube right now, you can see me holding up the book. But as we've been reading through this book, we have decided that this is one that is worth talking about here. Not only are we liking it, but there are people all over the country and the world that are also liking this book. It is sold out in every bookstore. It is sold out on Amazon. And so clearly the message of this book is one that resonates with people. And as we have been reading through it, realize that it ties directly to the topics that we talk about here on the Banyan Effect podcast. So we thought, what a perfect opportunity for us to relate this back to our podcast and share a message. So if you don't have this book, we do have some extras. So we're going to do a giveaway on this book. So if you're listening and you don't yet follow our Instagram page, make sure you head over there and you'll see our giveaway appear there very soon. The book starts really in chapter 1. So we're in chapter 1 right now. And the book really relates to a topic that we talked about last week on our podcast, which is the difference between self-confidence and self-worth. And Jamie Kern-Lena, the author of this book, really sets the stage well in the descriptions between the two. And we, again, shared that a little bit on our podcast last week. One of the things that she talks about in this first chapter is recognizing what this means for ourselves, is that when we start to really look at the differences between self-confidence and self-worth and what keeps us from growing or what keeps us sabotaging ourselves in our lives is really this low self-worth problem. So we're going to really dig into that today and how that sort of represents itself in the public eye.
Yeah, last week when we started talking about this book, I think we thought we could just put in this cute little package what we learned at that virtual conference we did that was based basically on all of the lessons in this book. And as we continued reading, we realized this has got to be a much longer conversation. And there are a lot of women out there right now reading this book. And so if you hear of any friends or family members that are also currently reading this book, send them our way. Send them over to the Banyan Effect Podcast Instagram account or to our podcast itself, because we're going to just dive into this book and just tackle it and kind of share our insights and insert our experiences and what we're seeing, because as we are both reading this book together and talking about it on a very regular basis, we are learning, we're not only learning how we are affected by self-worth, but also we're able to just to see it in so many instances in our day-to-day lives. And so it's just a really important lesson. And I really do feel like this is, like the book talks about, the foundation, not only for anyone, I like to say women, but I think anyone on the planet, it is the foundation. And I think that it's also going to be the foundation for the Banyan Effect, because we can't really continue to expand these roots and these tree trunks that we talk about, like the banyan tree does, if it's not on solid ground. So I think it's going to be a really important series that we go on together. I also want to just say that I know that I sound like I smoked a pack of cigarettes this weekend. I did not. I am recovering from a cold, so bear with me. But Leslie, why don't you start with talking about the chameleon effect, because I know that's one area that you really resonated with.
So the beginning of this book, Jamie really talks about how low self-worth shows up. And one of the parts that really resonated with me was, like you said, this chameleon effect. And so I feel like we've talked about it on this podcast before, but the way that I relate this to my life and anybody else that is out there working in a career and building their career is, and you'll know what I'm talking about here, is usually when you start a job or when you're in transition or getting a promotion at a job or, getting new direct reports, you can take some sort of personality assessment test. And that test is really getting at like, what type of leader are you and what are your strengths in the workplace and where are your challenges in the workplace? I knew going into all of those tests, I always asked myself the question and sometimes even said it out loud. Am I taking this test as the work Leslie or the at home Leslie? And everybody's like, oh, just do what feels right. And I thought that was very normal to have a work me, a home me, a friend me. And I almost looked at it as a strength. I looked at this being able to be a chameleon and just insert myself into different social situations or friend groups or work careers and fit in just fine. And not only fit in, but stand out in these roles. And what I'm learning is that it's not normal. And I know that I'm not alone in that feeling like there's there's different me's. I'm showing up different depending on where I am. And that's not a strength. It's actually an issue of not leaning into who I am as a person and really understanding who I am as a person and feeling empowered to show up as that person, no matter where I am. So Jamie actually talks about it as your representative. So you're showing up as this representative dependent on where you are. And that's actually a high self-confidence trait and a low self-worth trait. And so when she talked about this in the book, it was that moment of like, wow, this is a problem. This isn't normal to experience this. And why I'm passionate about sharing it here on this podcast is this is a conversation that I have had with coworkers throughout my career. And we joke about these when we take this self-assessment test of like, well, which one am I taking? And so I want people to really hear that message because I think it's that first step to recognizing that it's not normal to feel like you're showing up in different versions or a different representative of yourself. That is an issue of not really understanding who you are as a person.
Yeah. And we've talked about this at length. And I mean, what is normal, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think it's super common. Like, so I think most people are doing this and they wear it as a badge of honor, honestly. And myself included, I think I've always said that that's why I think that I'm really good at sales because I can like figure out some way to connect with pretty much any person I'm in front of. Like I can walk into a room and I can walk up to any person in that room, start a conversation and figure out a way to relate to them.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like that's the chameleon type of thing. And you're right. Like I always thought like, look at me, like that's a great attribute. And not that it's not, but I think what it ends up causing us to do is overfunction because it takes a lot of energy to be all of these different people and wear all of these different hats and adjust who we are depending on who we're in front of. It's exhausting. And it's she talks about how it's very typical of that kind of type A personality. And I think you and I can always resonate with anything that involves that type A.
Yeah, I think she actually said in there that perfectionists are often high self-confidence, low self-worth. And I felt that one deep down in my bones because I have always joked about being I am a perfectionist, now a recovering perfectionist, I want to say. But I never really thought about it that way, is categorizing perfectionists as someone who have low self-worth. And so it was a really easy then shift to be like, okay, I'm not going to wear that as a badge of honor anymore because that is not a badge of honor. There was another part that I thought was really interesting where the more these expectations that are sort of layered onto us of how we need to show up in the world and show up in these different situations, the more and more that we do that. So every single day when we go into work and we're not really showing up as our authentic self, and then we're switching who we are when we go out to dinner with friends, and then we're switching again who we are when we come back home and hang out with our children. The more that we do that and the more that we play that chameleon effect, the further and further we get away from who we truly are. And the harder then it is to discover and find who we are. And so when I really think about that, I mean, many of us now, I think now being late 30s, it's been 15 to 20 years in a business world showing up as who I thought others needed me to show up as, or how I was supposed to show up as, and then showing up different at home with my children or out with friends. And so after doing it for that long time, it doesn't surprise me that it took and still is taking a lot of work to really dig in and identify who I really am. Because the more that you do it, the more disassociated with your true self that you get.
Yeah, the farther away you get from who you really are. And that's, I think, too, where she talks a lot about fulfillment. And I think that plays into it, too. It's like, so, they talk, we've all heard about like extroverts and introverts and how, an extrovert can go out and have dinner with a bunch of people and they'll come home at the end of the day and feel like filled up, where an introvert doesn't or whatever. Well, I think that even if you're an extrovert and you go out and you are a chameleon in the event that you're at or dinner or whatever you're doing, and then you come home and you're like, well, I'm an extrovert. Why don't I feel fulfilled? Well, it's because you didn't have any real conversations with anybody. Because if I go in as my chameleon self and I have to overfunction the conversation to the degree that I need to in order to figure out how I can connect with this absolute stranger, right? Like I am putting all of the energy and effort into how can I connect with them on a level instead of like actually getting to know somebody on, and having like an intimate conversation where you feel like there is an actual connection that matters to you and matters to them, because you're only focused on how can you figure out a way to relate to them so that you can connect instead of like organically connecting with somebody. So it's very different if I go into a room of people and I stumble across somebody that I can start talking about sourdough and chickens with, and then we end up talking about this all night, and I come home and I feel filled up because I feel fulfilled because I had genuine, real connection. But I think what happens when we have these chameleon type, experiences with people, we end up unfulfilled. We end up feeling like drained and exhausted instead of like getting their positive energy, which is a huge miss. And then if you're doing that in your work life and your personal life and all of these things, like day after day or hour after hour, you're just draining. Like that whole, you can't pour from an empty cup. Like that's the exact scenario where you're going to find yourself is pouring from an empty cup because you are focused so much on over functioning to relate to people that you are never having any sort of conversation that fills you, like fills
it's
myself.
Interesting as we even talk through this. I wonder if, do we show up in these instances trying so hard to relate and connect with people because there's this deep down feeling of needing to? And I guess what I mean by that is when you show up at work acting like this person and being this person and talking in a certain way, it's because you need that job, you need to fit in, you need to grow your career, you need to make money. And so the easiest way to do that is to show up and just fit in and act like people there. That's safe. That's very safe to do. Same with, one of the topics that we've said we're going to have on this episode is adult friendships. And so knowing that that's sort of a need and a desire in a lot of people is adult friendships. Are we showing up to these potentially new relationships, just trying to do whatever we can to relate to them because there's this need or unfulfillment internally of not having a close adult friendship? But really, you're doing the opposite of what you should do to get that like real genuine connection. But it feels like the safest and the easiest way just to acquire quickly that need of the adult friendship.
Yeah. And I think how do I say this? I know for me in my adult life, and when I look at my adult life, friendships and relationships, and this could go down some rabbit holes here, but I'll try to stay on course, because I know that part of my issue with adult relationships stems from my upbringing, my experiences as in middle school, I was bullied. I think as an adult, what I ended up doing was thinking that like I needed to just make as many friends as I possibly could. And that was really easy for me to do because I could find a way to relate to any woman and every woman. But that doesn't mean that the relationship, just because I could relate to them and I could overfunction the relationship, doesn't mean that it was it was a genuine relationship and friendship that was life-giving on both sides, right? Like I've stepped away from certain friendships and realized like, wow, now that I have stopped putting in all of the effort, there's really nothing left over. And what that means to me now, what I'm realizing is it's because I overfunctioned that friendship and I made it valuable for them. But it's like, well, at the end of the day, what did I get out of that? If I'm not putting in all of the energy and all of the effort, there's nothing left. Like what was there for me in the beginning? And I think that is a really big thing that I've realized from going through this and just dissecting like some of these things like relationships, is that when you really break it down and you realize where you maybe have been showing up unauthentically, how it can definitely get you more friends. But are they life-giving, life-fulfilling friendships that you feel, again, fulfilled by? Or are they just friendships that are draining you and there is a huge expectation and a whole lot of strings attached? Okay. Hey, bestie. Do you want to be part of something fun we're working on? We're excited to announce the upcoming release of a new book that will redefine the way we build and live in our homes.
This book will not only change the way we build homes, but also be a beautiful and inspirational book to help you better build, design, and live in your own home.
Here's what we need you to do. We need photos. Do you have a unique or inspiring story behind your home? A room that dreams are made out of? Maybe a space that has a historical charm or a modern design, or even a cozy space that makes it truly exceptional?
If you're proud of your home and you want it to be featured in our upcoming book, then we want to hear from you. Share your stories and your photos with us at info@thebanyaneffectpodcast.com or fill out our contact form on our website at www.thebanyaneffectpodcast.com. Don't miss out on this incredible opportunity to become a part of something truly special. Maybe adult friendships or building closer relationships isn't your thing, but one of the things that also really relates to low self-worth is this constant desire to achieve more and more and more. And you think about like even those that are most fulfilled, it's one of the things that Jamie talks about in her book is where you see these people that have achieved everything. They have the picture perfect life. Is they're still feeling unfulfilled when you really sit down and they open up and share their story. And so what that tells us is that there is no amount of achievement that is ever going to make us feel fulfilled. It's never going to be enough.
Yeah. And you can easily self-diagnose this issue If you have ever gotten a promotion or earned an award or accomplished a really big goal and then turned around and said, okay, now what? Like next, what's next? Like, or you just, you finished a marathon. A lot of marathon runners talk about how they get really depressed afterwards because they work for months and months and months to train for this marathon. They run the marathon and it's like, yeah, they get a medal, but it didn't change who they were. Like it's still them. And that like high that they get from running that marathon only lasts like a day. And now they're stuck with themselves, just like with those achievements. And I can resonate with this so much because I am an achiever and I chase after, I love big shiny awards. Like if you're watching on YouTube, you can see it sits right behind me. It's very important to me, that award that I got, or it was anyway. Those, I live off of those things. But I'll tell you what, when I earned that award, the very next day, I felt no different. In fact, I was like, okay, I did it. Now I got to start all over on, turn the page and do it all over again. And that is exhausting, especially when your self-worth is wrapped up in it, because it's like, okay, I'm good enough now. Like right now, today, I made it. I'm good enough. And then you come back to reality and you're like, oh, but now to be worthy again, I have to earn that award again. And then guess what happens when you don't? Like last year, I was not winning any awards for my real estate production because I was just trying to survive my life, right? And then it had me questioning everything, like, who am I and what is my worth and how will I ever be fulfilled and enough and all of these things. I mean, and I'm grateful for it because I really do feel like you can't build it back up. You can't build that foundation until it comes crumbling down. So I'm grateful for that. But I didn't realize that that's what was going on. This book came for me in my life at such a really amazing time because I just finished figuring that out to some degree of like, there's something really big missing. And it also like the amount of money, I think too, is like, we think that once we make this amount of money, it'll be good and we'll have arrived. Right. And we're set up to fail with this. Like 100% we are set up to fail. Like you open up your social media and every single influencer on there is trying to sell you crap from Amazon. And you think like, I open it up and I think I need all this stuff, like, right? If I have this stuff that this influencer has, is like, I'll be good. I'll be happy, and it just goes down this list. And it's like, you get to the bottom and then you just start right back up at the top. And it's this really dysfunctional hamster wheel that we're all on.
And like you just said, it's everywhere around us. I mean, I am trying to be a lot more conscious of this in my children now because we live in a culture that values achievement. We just do. It exists. I see myself congratulating my children for getting the good grades. I'm congratulating them for winning the cheer competition. I'm congratulating them for achieving something that they were trying to achieve. And while all of that's important, it's not like achievement and putting out a goal and reaching it isn't important, but I see myself now ingraining in my children's brains that you get rewarded and loved when you achieve something. And now I'm trying to backpedal myself of what is the balance of being excited for them and wanting to fuel that drive in them to grow, but also making sure that they know that they are enough as they are and their achievements don't define who they are as a person. Like there needs to be that separation. And I don't know what the right answer is yet, but I'm certainly now much more aware of myself. Like, oh yeah, I'm starting that already in my children, that they're loved when they achieve.
Yeah. Well, and you and I are not there yet because we went to a cheer competition and we were probably more mad and upset that we didn't win the golden buzzer, which is basically like we were told anyway, which I don't know if I believe it anymore, but we were told that the audience, like the crowd, us as parents could win this buzzer, and that if they did, like confetti would come flying out onto the mat, and like
yes,
we peed our pants. We tried so hard to win that dang buzzer, and not just us, but like the whole team. I mean, we deserved that dang buzzer, and it totally ruined our weekend because. Like our girls, I mean, they cared for like 5 minutes, and I pouted about that all night long.
I'm mad about it again now. Thanks for bringing it up.
And so we are not there yet. All right. Yeah, I know. I'm still mad about it. So hopefully by the end of this book, we will have those answers on what you say to your kids, because I'm the same way. Like when my kid, when Mackenzie, she was just telling me that, they've got some injuries again, and we're going into a really big competition this weekend. And I'm like, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? We're not going to win. Like I already get like all worked up about it. And I just like you, like I want to instill in her that it matters. Like I want them to care, but I don't want it to be a reflection of their worth. And it's really a hard thing. That's why, I'm 41 and I'm trying to figure this out, right? Can't expect my 12-year-old to know how to do it, but I hope that by the time I'm 43, I can help figure this out for her. And for the
part of the
future
change.
generations.
Yeah. One of the things that I have been thinking about a lot, like on this journey of self-worth, is sometimes when I think about like having full self-worth, like, so fast forward and I feel I feel all of the things that describe self-worth. So like I am love and I am enough. And I feel and truly believe that those things are true. One of the things that sometimes worries me is I don't want to be okay just staying flat for the rest of my life though either. In self-worth, does the desire to achieve more and more and more and more go away? And that's one of my I don't want to say fears, but one of the things that I'm thinking of is what does it look like when you do have full self-worth? Do you still have that same desire to grow when internally you're leaning in? You're like, I'm enough. What does that look like?
Yeah, I can totally relate to that question. And the thing is, I think that what it comes down to is I think that by the time we get to this place that we're going is like having more self-worth, I think that your natural desires just change so much. And I can speak to this a little bit because last year, and I think part of it too is like your personality. Like I think that we are every single one of us on the face of the earth was created for big things. Though I think that like those big, quote unquote, big things are very different, obviously, from person to person. But I don't think that the big life that you and I desire, I don't think that necessarily changes. But what I do think changes is what our definition is. So for me, this is a great example. I think I used to want a big life, and it looked like, if I'm being honest, it looked like big material things, where now my big life looks like having a lot of freedom, like time freedom and financial freedom. So I think that it changes, but it's one of those things that evolves over time. Like we can't know what the drive looks like in us in a year, 5 years from now. But I think that we can certainly say that there will still be the drive. It's just that what we're working towards will change.
Yeah, I almost wonder
if
the more that you feel sure of your self-worth, if the drive, that we're saying this out loud, if the drive grows stronger, because internally you're saying, I'm worthy of more. I'm worthy of more. I deserve that. And then that fuels you to go after it. Where all of the fun stuff, we've talked about, like, I still want the fun vacations and I still want the fun stuff, but is it coming from this like drive that is like, I'm worthy of this, not I need to achieve it to prove myself. It almost feels like you're coming from a different core, and that's what's going to make it more successful.
Yeah, I think you're spot on. I do think that as we learn more about our self-worth and we grow in that area, our desires will continue to grow. It just is going to look different. And the definition will change on what we're striving for, and the reason behind it will. But I would almost argue the people who don't think that they deserve a vacation or should have a vacation or, whatever, those are the people that really need to look at their self-worth and realize that, yes, you deserve it, not because you earn X amount of dollars or because you do anything, just because you were created. You are worthy of having all of the luxuries that we all are. But until we believe we're worthy of them, we aren't going to get them. You're not going to get this big, fabulous life if you don't believe that you're worth it. Because what we will end up doing is, self-sabotaging ourselves back to what we feel that our worth is. We talked last week about how she says that your worth is your ceiling. And I think that is so true. And I think that we will always fall back to the place in which we think that we're worthy. And I have to sometimes wonder if that's why, and sometimes like I have a really, really great year in my career. And then the next year, although I think I want an even better year or I want to repeat the year, I end up having a worse year. And it's like, is that because I felt unworthy of the amount of success that I found in the previous year? I don't know. We'll see going forward how that all shakes out. But a lot of this too is unlearning. That's a big thing that that Jamie Kern Lima talks about too, is unlearning these lies that we have told ourselves, and that goes hand in hand with that ceiling that
I love when she says
create.
that, where it's not about learning more. It's unlearning all of the expectations that have been put on you and getting back to the raw you and building it from there. When we talk about people getting to feeling truly worthy, one of the things that's been on my mind a lot is like, what would the world look like? And Mindy, I think this was actually a question that you posed when we were driving in the car one time, and it's just continued to be something that's on my mind. But what would the world look like if we were all worthy? And it's a really hard question to answer. I don't know what it would be, but I think about like, what would the business world look like? Like if everybody was worthy, would there be this mass exodus from the business world, or would business as we know it be 10 times more successful? And I think about like CEOs. Have they cracked the code to self-worthy, or are they the ones that don't have it at all? What would gym culture look like if everybody came into the gym feeling full of worth? Our culture, I think in itself would experience such a significant shift. I don't even know how to picture or think about what it would look like.
Yeah. Well, and even just to start, just as a start, if our listeners can just think about like, what would your life look like? How would your life look different today, right now, if you just increased your self-worth? If you just walked around with the thought that with your default thought is, I am worthy. I am enough just the way that I am, and not because anybody else says so. How could your life change if you just change your default thinking to that statement? We're going to leave you with that today. So we're going to just leave you with that today. Think about that. Think about your self-worth, where you are now, and what your life would really look like if you had all the self-worth that you deserve. And then next week, we will come back and we will continue this conversation and keep working through this incredible book, Worthy by Jamie Kern Lima. So come back, visit us for more, and please, please, please share, subscribe, follow us on Instagram, engage with us. We are here for you, and we would love to hear from you. We will see you next time on the Banyan Effect Podcast. We hope you have enjoyed today's episode and found some valuable insights. If you liked what you heard, we'd love it if you would hit the subscribe button.
We love hearing from our listeners, so drop us a comment, share your thoughts on social, or review wherever you listen to podcasts. Your feedback keeps us going and helps us bring you the content you want to hear.
As always, we appreciate your time and company. Until next time, stay curious, stay inspired, and keep listening to the Banyan Effect Podcast.